Hello, Lou Hamilton from Audible Elegance here in Cincinnati, Ohio. We do work on Facebook and on Instagram, and we also have an X account, and I write a monthly blog, which I hope you enjoy reading. And we're located on Montgomery Road in Cincinnati, a couple doors north of the Montgomery Inn, and across the street from Montgomery Cyclery if you're into cycling. Tonight I thought I would talk about the difference between a good high-end home audio system and home theater. This was triggered by somebody who wanted to have both, but it also was triggered by a video that I watched by Steve Guttenberg, who visited Dolby and was presented what the Dolby Atmos system is. And honestly and sincerely, I don't think a really great audio reviewer is really the best person to review home theater. While they're very similar, they have distinctly different goals. And so I started out by drawing what's going on and explain why they're different. A good audio system, often for music and such, is based upon two speakers. And what you hope you can develop with these two speakers is what audiophiles like to refer to as soundstage. And the soundstage is not only between the speakers, but if it can also be accomplished, goes beyond the outer edges of the speakers. The other quality that they look for is what's referred to as depth. This is an element of what they're looking for in this presentation, which is known as image. And we were a purveyor of high-end audio systems. We continue to be purveyors of high-end audio systems, and these are the goals we look for. However, this doesn't really work with home theater. So let me draw that out and explain what's going on. When we talk about home theater, the word image is applied to the screen. It can be a flat panel, it can be a projection screen, but this is what's really considered the image, if you talk to anybody that's interested in home theater. Now, to accompany the image, we get into essentially steering logic. And the screen itself and whatever's played on it provides the depth that one sees. Whereas in audio, you're hoping that's created sonically. Now, what becomes critical is to understand that 60% of what you hear comes from the center channel speaker. The balance, 20 here and 20 here, is used for steering logic. Because when you watch movies, a person isn't always dead center on the screen like a monologue. They can be to the right, they can be to the left, and you also have events that are panned that move right to left, and you need these outer speakers to steer the sound to the right and left. This is very unlike home audio. Then we take it further, and it's what I call the fun factor. And the reason I call it the fun factor is that the goal of home theater is to bring you into the acoustical environment of what you're listening to. So you end up, and I don't care how many speakers are in the system, I'm just going to use a basic 5.1 and then I'll bring in Atmos and explain why Atmos is a really cool thing. So you get into, classic surround speakers. No, I'm not going to get into subwoofers. That's another video. And what you're trying to do is that as events are visually looking like they're coming past you. They, in fact, sonically come past you. Both sides. And you might even have something more interesting, which is where they pan it in such a way that the sound is not only passing you, but also changing direction. This is really neat stuff. You get this in a few videos. I can name a few. I'll get into that, some of my favorite demo movies for this sort of effect. And this is very, very unlike audio system at all. And you've got to get this envelopment, and that's what it's called, envelopment, to bring the listener or the viewer into the movie itself. Now, I had a discussion with another dealer today talking about the importance of the center channel and its relative to the right and left, because he's got a good audio system. And what's critical, because he was worried about, I need a center channel that's three-way, No. What's important is that the timbre of the center channel is matched to the timbre of the right and left. One way you can test your own system as to whether this is really happening is with your AV processor or receiver, simply turn off the center channel and listen to the movie to the right and left. And if the voices and everything else sound different than the center channel, you've got a mismatch going on. A mismatch disrupts the steering logic of the front. And what happens is that your ears are very good at looking for defects, and what it tunes into tries to steer your hearing to the worst sounding speaker. You can prove this self with a basic audio system by simply taking your stereo speakers, and if they're a bookshelf, turn one on its side, because then the timing is all screwed up. And your attention is going to be pulled to the screwed up speaker every time. If they're on stands, put a rock or something underneath of it so it wobbles. It's not firm. Again, your hearing will direct you that way, or to use the audiophile term, the image shifts to the right or to the left. It's that simple, folks. This is not rocket science. This is appreciating that your hearing is really a defensive system. I'll give you an example. For us older folks, if we hear a number 2 wood pencil drop on a concrete or a linoleum floor, well, we have enough experience, we know what it sounds like, and we're not worried about what it is, but we're triangulating as to where it is. Now, take someone who pulls into your driveway with a vehicle you do not recognize. Your first instinct is to look out the window to determine what is it. Your hearing, since it's not cataloged in your brain, views it as a threat. That's why getting the timbre right and watching a movie, because you're seeing things that you have a knowledge in your head of what it should sound like. Now, the reason Lucasfilm could get away with lightsabers and all this other stuff, they actually created the catalog for you because you had no reference point. I don't like using those movies for demonstration because you don't know what the truth is anyway. It's all a fiction. I like using movies that have people walking in cornfields, like the Field of Dreams, or walking on cinder if you knew what cinder was, but doors opening and closing, the reference of normal things we experience in our life. That's the way to judge a theater system. It's not how much it goes boom. It's not watching Arnold Schwarzenegger grab a hose off a tank and make a flamethrower out of it. I have no idea what that sounds like. So it's not a good reference to what the timbre and accuracy of the system is. And Tomlinson Holman is very, very correct that a system must be very musically accurate. And that's where he totally agrees with the audiophiles, because if you listen to most movies, 80% of the soundtrack involves some form of music one way or another. It could be something that causes your heart to race. It could be something as simple as da-da-da-da-da on a piano for Jaws. but it's all there. So it's got to be musically right. He's absolutely correct. But it's also got to fulfill the steering logic. And that's what's across the front. And now you're including the surround speakers. And there we go. Now, we dealt with a lot of things for years, and we actually used dipole radiators in the side channel. In the early days, we used magnepans. They had little speakers you could hang on the wall, which was really great because then you could rotate them and tune them to the room and what you're trying to correct. Because what happens in a lot of home theaters is something that is just what I call pop and fresh. Because as the sound is being panned back here, your attention's here, and all of a sudden you hear something back here and you're tempted to turn around and look. That is a great example of a terrible home theater from the audio side because the image is here. It's not over here. You're not in a Disney 360 theater. You should not have your eyesight, your hearing cause your eyesight to go off the screen and look around the room. But a lot of systems suffered pop and fresh. So the timbre of the surrounds is also related to the timbre of the front. Now, the dipole radiators, this could be, a 7-1 system or whatever. It did a lot of things right, but for a lot of people, it didn't do a lot of things right too. I mean, we had all sorts of applications where we did battles on this. What the Dolby folks created with the Atmos was if you didn't have sidewalls where you could attach these guys, they put it in the ceiling. Now there's some electronic and acoustical engineering that goes on with this, which is not pure from the audiophile point of view. And this is where I disagree with Steve, is that the goal of home theater is the fun factor. And the more you can envelop the home theater viewer, user, in the experience, that's the goal. The goal is not creating some sort of auditory field back here, which is an illusion. And I talked about that in my last video, or one of my prior videos, where this image and specificity is a creation of the recording engineer. It doesn't exist in reality in about 99% of the cases of music you listen to. It's all multi-tracked, it's all mixed together, and then they try to create these effects. Now, if you think that the people in home theater making movies aren't paying attention to accuracy, my God, they are paying to accuracy beyond belief. It's not unusual for them to spend $20 or $30 million creating the soundtrack recordings for movies. There's a lot of albums that if they spent $1,000, that'd be pretty amazing, okay? They put a lot of effort in creating this fun factor. Disney is particularly good at it. And I'm referring to the earlier Disney movies. One of my favorites to use is Beauty and the Beast, because none of that is real. So everything they create has to reinforce what you're seeing is trying to make it real. So when you see Belle come down the steps to meet the Beast, if you have a really good system, you'll actually hear her dress, which is apparently made of chiffon, being dragged over steps. That is in the soundtrack. It is there. 95% of the systems that I listen to obscure that sound. It's there. That's how much effort they put into it. And it's all part of the fun factor, making the visual experience as real as possible to the viewer. So there's a very distinct difference between the goals of home theater from the acoustic, the sound side, and that of high-end audio, which is why I don't think high-end audio reviewers should be reviewing home theater, because you've got a lot of electronic manipulation going on here to create this. Purity takes a slight second step to the fun factor. I know I've talked at CES 6 times about home theater. I've talked with Thomas and Holman, all very interesting insight. And Thomason actually had a 10-1 system because he was trying to complete this envelopment. Now, nobody adopted 10-1. This was 15 years ago, okay? He understood this goal. I'll do another video in the future that talks about the difference in the environments between building a good home theater, which is very different than building a good high-end audio room. They're distinctly different in 2 critical areas. And I'll get to that in the future. But please take in consideration some of the tests and examples I gave you. Turn off that center channel. And if you hear something entirely different in the timbre of the voice, you've got a problem. And you're interfering with the front steering logic. Front to rear should have the same timbre or very close. So that's the reason I disagreed with really, really nice speakers trying to accomplish high-end audio, and then you have some sort of cube or something stuck in the back. There's nothing in common between the timbre of those devices. These have to be very similar. So if I sound like I'm an advocate and very serious about this, I am, because I love this stuff and I love high-end audio, but I recognize they're different. And that's the starting point when you're trying to develop this system. Another video in the future is I'll talk about the best ways of trying to accomplish both, but there is no such thing as a perfect home theater and a perfect high-end audio system. And I'll talk about why that is in the future as well. Thank you and have a good day.